Hey everyone, it's Josh Spilker. from AirOps, and I'm joined by Emily Kramer from MKT1. Is that how I say it, or is it Market One?
Nobody knows. I don't even know. I say Market One, but I used to say MKT1. It's a bad name. It's
Uh,
conversational. Nobody knows how to say it.
yeah, but
It's
we're so glad you're here.
Market One is fine.
Market One. We have a little tradition here. If this is your first time joining us, if you could put a star in the chat, that would be great. And if you've been here before, you put a rocket ship in the chat. So let me see a few of those coming in. Here's a star. And then rocket ship equals
Okay, Leanne put an
few
asterisk,
times.
and honestly, that's the first thing I thought of too when you said star, was to put an
I
asterisk. I don't
mean,
know if that says something about like, were you born before emojis were a huge thing? I don't know, but I felt the same way, so I'm gonna do it right back. There you
maybe
go.
it sounds more about my emoji selection. I need to like improve on that a bit. There we go.
I'll
An
think about it
asterisk.
for you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Well, really glad. Thank you, Leanne, for the asterisk. Hi, Anna. Glad you're here. A lot of folks starting to come in. Yeah, so Brandy, thanks for joining us on this great session today. How the smartest CMOs build content like a product. A lot of questions these days about how content teams are influencing the marketing org in general. So many changes with search and organic traffic. So we are going to jump in there. Sounds like an echo. Apologies for that. Let me turn this down a
I
little
think
bit.
I just fixed it on my side.
Okay, great.
Someone tell us if you still hear an echo. Use I don't know, emoji, a dolphin emoji if you still hear an echo.
Dolphin emoji echo.
They have the
Oh, wait.
echolocation. It was smart,
I see
Josh.
what you did there. I was like,
Yeah,
what?
it
Then
took
I
me a
then I got it.
second. Yeah.
Um, Maybe for everybody out there, me and Emily had some advising a couple years ago on a startup. So this is a real pleasure for us or for me. I used to talk to Emily quite frequently, and so it's glad to reconnect here. But if you don't know her already, she is the founder of Market One. We decided the newsletter plus the Dear Marketers podcast, former leader at Asana, Carta, Astro, Ticketfly, huge on LinkedIn, huge on Substack. Everyone find and subscribe to that. But we're really excited for this conversation today. So we are going to first talk a little bit about what AirOps can do. We're one of the tools where we just launched a visibility to action layer. So you can see how you're doing an AI search, but then really take action on it. So track and audit your visibility footprint, act with those workflows in AirOps to improve your search visibility. And then we have some tools to help you prove pipeline impact to the C-suite. Gonna chat a little bit more about that later, but if you are interested in getting early access to our visibility to action layer, hit us up at growth@airops.com. You can put webinar in the subject line. You can put Emily Kramer in the subject line. You can put MKT1 in the subject line. You can put early
Dolphin,
access, Dolphin in
star
there, all
emoji,
of that.
whatever. Yeah.
But here's some stuff we're going to talk about today: how to treat content like a product. And we're going to separate this into two different parts: building the right strategy and team, and then how we really create high value content. And then we'll have some time for some questions at the end. So excited to start it off here. So let's jump into how the best teams are creating content and why they are treating it like a product.
Yeah, for sure. I say this line all the time. Content is a product, treat content like a product, however you want to say it. But basically, this recognition that content is another product for your audience. So just like you would, or hopefully like your product team is doing when building the product itself, hopefully they're solving actual problems for your audience and they're actually trying to add value to your audience in what they're doing. You need to do the same thing with content. You need to say, what problems does my audience have and how can I solve those via content? And to do that, a lot of the things that you do, both in how you build your team and how you set strategy, look a lot like product. So you'll be planning with roadmaps, you'll have a strategy sort of foundation and a point of view on what you should be saying, and you should be experimenting with new formats. Just like your product team needs to build in AI, you need to think about AI and use AI to build interesting products yourself. And so we'll get into all of these details, but essentially in all the ways you can kind of imagine, from the fact that you're building a product, which is the content, to the fact that you're operating like a product team, content and marketing is another product. So that's what we're talking about today. So we'll get into all of this stuff.
Maybe a little bit of a step back. How are most teams think of content today? If they're not thinking about a product, maybe like what's the traditional way of thinking about it?
Yeah, they think about it like a box they need to check, or they think about it as, I think a sure sign that you're not treating content like a product is you have a monthly goal around the quantity of things you put out. Like, we're going to put out 10 posts this month. Like, rather than we're going to think in terms of we're going to have these big sort of tentpole pieces and these big pieces of anchor content. We're then going to use that theme and go further if it works and build all this other stuff and repurpose content. And so you're thinking in terms of what you should be thinking in terms of what are my big bets, like you would on the product side, and then how do I double down on those things, not just let me check the box on the number of things I'm making. So there's just strategy behind it and thought behind it. So
Yeah, love that. Good,
yep.
good level set there. So part one, we're diving in here, how to build the right strategy.
Yeah, so we already talked about this, but I think the first step to like changing your content strategy to be more effective is to just start thinking like this. It sounds so easy, but start thinking like content is a product and elevating how you're thinking about it. And I think to do that, you need to, again, think about big pieces of content, big themes that you want to talk about. You need to think about what perceptions or narratives that you want to drive and start leveling up your thinking about it. And then this is going to lead to choosing quality over quantity, like I just talked about. It's going to lead to running well thought out campaigns with the growth side of the team, the marketing team. And we'll talk about more things I think it leads to. But overall, it gets you out of what I call the random acts of marketing trap. So random acts of marketing is just checking things off the list. I use a RAM emoji,
Yeah,
RAM.
love that.
I started this off like acting like I wasn't strong with emojis, saying I would have used the asterisk, but I have some emoji strength. So
Yeah,
I
I have
use
to
this.
find, oh, I found a RAM. Okay, great. I put it in there.
There's the RAM, yeah. So I actually I'm not, sometimes where I'm sitting in behind me, there's like a picture of a ram and a no sign. Like, so this is like my big thing. If I have one main principle in marketing, it's like, don't do random acts of marketing. Like, strategically think about your big bets and what's going to drive impact and forget about the rest. And so that's what you're really trying to go for when you think of content as a product. So let's go to the next one. Unless you have questions about that.
No, no, that's good. Let's think a little bit about our drivers here. I love this slide because we have these like different buckets that really
Yeah.
drive our marketing strategy.
Yeah. So a lot of people, the big I don't know, thing that gets you stuck in the RAM trap, the random acts of marketing trap, is just like copying someone else's strategy. And on the content side, it's like, oh, I saw this company do this report on this. I'm going to do the same thing. And, or a classic example everyone likes is my founder saw a billboard in San Francisco and they want one too. Or, you name the thing. Or our competitor ranks really highly on these 3 keywords for SEO, but they're not core to our business. So things like that, where you just start copying and just playing the catch-up game, and you're never going to win that way. So you need to go back to start and first principles thinking, much like you would when you're building a product. And so you need to truly understand your audience, the ecosystem and market you're playing in, not just competitors, but also complementary companies, companies that had the same audience as you. Write your positioning that way. And so that's one thing. Do the product marketing research, I call it, do the audience market research, but then also look at your business model. Look at how much money you make per customer, if they have to talk to sales or not. These kinds of things dictate what sort of efforts you should be doing and how much money you should be spending on them. And then lastly, I talk about looking to your marketing advantages, which I think I have a whole slide on next, which is really figuring out what you can be great at as a startup, which is shouldn't be what your competitors or other people can be great at. You have a unique story, you have unique dynamics in your business or your market right now, and you want to figure out what those are and lean into them and play to your strengths. So I'll talk about that in a second and bring it to life a little more. But I think the big thing here is like you have to make a bespoke plan to your company. And that starts by going back to that first principles layer. So what are these advantage or strengths I talk about? You might have other ones, but really
Hmm.
these are things that are core to your business or innate to your business or dynamics in your business that are your strengths. And maybe you're not fully leveraging these strengths yet, but they're things that are sitting there. And when you throw fuel on these fires, they'll help you grow faster.
Explode. Yeah, there you go.
Explode. I don't know. I don't want your business to explode, but, and this helps you once you know what these advantages are, it helps you figure out what content you should make. So for example, if you operate in an ecosystem where this is like an obvious example, but you have tons of integration partners, then you should be making content with those integration partners and leaning in to your ecosystem to help you do marketing. Sounds pretty straightforward when you think about it this way, but I see companies that have a ton of partnership potential saying, oh, I'm going to lead into webinars without guests from my ecosystem. No, like you're sitting
Mm.
on this asset, like double down on it. Um, or for instance, you could have an advantage could be that you're going after a very specific vertical while all the other products in your space are going after a horizontal play. Or for instance, like they're going after a bunch of audiences or they have tons of products and you're laser focused because you're an earlier stage company. Well, then lean into that. Don't try to be everything to everyone. Get really
Mm.
specific for that audience and like really laser focus. And I think people are afraid to do that because they're afraid of like missing out on these other audiences. Well, you're not going to beat a big company who can serve many audiences with different products at their game. So lean in to that wedge that you have in with that smaller market. So there's
I,
like a bunch of these, but those are
Yeah,
some examples.
I
Yeah, go ahead.
think I don't know if the slide is in this deck or I've seen some graphics from you before where you've kind of like labeled some companies that meet these different ecosystem like advantages or like fuel driven or product driven.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, for sure.
who's doing really well or who do you kind of look to for maybe some models for these different advantages here that teams could look
Yeah,
at?
for sure. So I think the on the ecosystem side, like really leaning into the community-led growth and partners. I think the best example right now is Clay, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. They just raised another huge round. I'm a little biased, I'm an investor, but they're doing such a great job tapping into the contractors and agencies that are using Clay, enabling them with creator tools. And then they're also like, even with their fundraising announcement this week, everyone on LinkedIn seemingly posted about it. That's because they give their network previews of things and these tools and enable them to create content for them and create videos for them. And so they're doing a great job of saying, we have this massive ecosystem that's built around us. Let's do this. On the fuel side, this is things like you have an amazing founding story, or there's a huge demand for educational content on what you're doing or for what you're doing, or you have amazing customer love or amazing proprietary data. I think Carta does a really good job with data and putting out data reports. I think who's doing a good job? I think I'm trying to think of who's doing a really great job with uh, kind of educational content right now. This is a small startup that I'm an investor in. It's called GC.ai.
Okay.
It's for in-house lawyers. And they do this really amazing thing where in-house lawyers don't know how to use AI. And that's what they are, an AI product for in-house lawyers.
Right.
And so the founder, who's a lawyer herself, used to be in-house counsel at Replit. She has a lot of credibility in the space, incredible founder story. And so she actually teaches courses on Maven about using AI as an in-house lawyer on a third-party platform to build credibility. And then that naturally becomes demand gen for people to buy the product. And it works amazing. And they've run, I don't know how many they've run at this point, but probably like 40 of these. And so it's an amazing tactic. And they're basically saying, we have this amazing founder with amazing credibility. We can use this third-party platform because lawyers don't know how to use AI and they feel like they have to and need to know how. And so they're putting all of these advantages together. So those are a few more examples. And I do have like tons. I have like one or two newsletters on this that gives you a lot more examples. I think someone was asking, I saw in the chat, someone was asking about like an incumbent or legacy company and
Yeah.
an advantage. Yeah, like, I mean, usually all of the like most successful B2B companies have, I'm sure there's similar things for B2C companies. It's probably a slightly different list. But have these advantages. So if you go back to like Slack, why did they win? Well, Slack win because one, because of their network effects, because they really focused on helping you add guests and that internal, external network effect of bringing in people not only from your company, but other companies, and also having that free offering. So a lot of those companies, Asana, Dropbox, Slack in that sort of PLG peak era
Right.
really leaned into these things. I think I'm trying to think of another incumbent. I think Toast, like the restaurant, the
Yeah.
restaurant
Uh,
software. I don't know what to
POS
call it.
or
POS. That's yeah. Yeah, it's the
it's the
restaurant thing.
yeah, yeah,
I don't work at a restaurant. It's
right.
not a side hustle of mine. But they started very specifically in specific types of restaurants and expanded out from that and expanded even beyond restaurants and now do like food delivery and other things now. So they kind of started with a very verticalized focused wedge in. So yeah, those are some, I mean,
Those are good
I could
examples.
go
Yeah.
on, and on, but again, like I have a bunch of stuff on this too in my newsletter. Just search MKT1 marketing advantages, you'll find more.
Yeah. And this next one is a concept I really like and I always kind of come back to is it's like, how do you balance I love this metaphor from you. How do you balance the fuel and the engine for your content production and your content distribution? I won't try to
Yep.
explain anymore. Go for it.
You're doing great. You might have seen this reference in the previous slide as well with fuel advantages and
Right.
engine advantages. Marketing is a complicated thing to describe to people who aren't marketers, especially even to people who are marketers. We get so like mired in like, what's a product marketer, what's a customer marketer, what's a growth marketer versus demand gen marketer versus content marketer, brand marketer. I could keep going, but
Yeah.
it's very confusing, especially to other people in the company and internally. And so really what you need in marketing and what marketing does is it creates fuel, it creates assets. So that could be your content, your messaging, your positioning, your design, creative, creates assets that add value, and it creates an engine to distribute those assets. So there's the creative and there's the distribution. And to do marketing right, you need to balance these things. So you can't just make a bunch of fuel and not have an engine. Like nobody's going to see it. You can't just build an engine and not have good fuel to put in it, because then you're going to be reaching people with nothingness. That a lot of like spammy outbound is like this. It's like you built this engine, but you're saying nothing interesting or of value to the audience. So you need to balance these things together. So the marketing team needs to work together. And when you're coming up with fuel or content you want to create, you need to make sure you have that distribution plan before you even make it. So you need to be thinking in terms of fuel and engine all the time. And not only do fuel and engine need to balance and match each other, but they need to be a fit for your audience. So underlying this whole thing or in the background is like match with your audience too. And so if you think about when you're making fuel, what's the engine? And if you don't have an engine and a way to distribute it, it's not worth making it. The other thing that will happen is people will say, oh, your content's bad, your fuel's bad. And then you'll start changing up what you're doing on the fuel or content side when you actually have like an engine problem. It's that you didn't distribute it. You don't have a fuel problem at all. So misdiagnosing this problem can lead you to throwing your whole content strategy away when really you need a distribution strategy. So across the team, really trying to analyze where's our biggest challenge right now? Is it on the fuel and engine side? Is it on connecting the dots between those things? Is it on it's not right for the audience, but we're working really together as two sides of the team? And so it's just this is like a central random acts of marketing and fuel and engine are both like the two things that underpin all of the things I write about and talk about.
Yeah, I want to go back to the example that you used with the legal AI startup that's teaching the lawyers
Courses.
how to use courses for lawyers because thinking about that example is you have really good fuel because you have all the founders like knowledge, the assets, and then part of the engine is like Maven putting it
Yes,
there,
they did it
but
on Maven.
they did it on
Not
Maven. So walk me through like maybe the difference between is tactics the only part of the engine or is it more than that? Or like I just like that symbiotic nature that they've
Yeah,
figured
I
out
mean, the
there.
decision there was like, well, what engine is going to go best with this? We're going to be teaching courses. That's the fuel. How are we going to get people to register for these courses? We could try to build that engine ourselves, but we think, especially lawyers, they want the credibility of another platform and the ratings on Maven and all of that. And it's also going to be faster for us to use their course platform. So let's use that as the engine. So it's like a mix of tactics and strategy. It's saying what is going to help us accelerate this the fastest, what's going to go together, and thinking about them in parallel. They didn't just say, oh, let's make this like, 12 lesson course and then, oh shit, where are we going to put this thing? Because that's what some
Mm-hmm.
teams would do. They
Yeah.
thought about it from the start. This is specific to Maven. And then they designed the curriculum as Maven curriculum is designed, which is cohort based with a group of people. And so it's just this getting the symbiosis there.
Yeah, yeah. So you have the course idea, but then it's like before you build the whole thing, where's it going to go? They decided like not to
Yes.
put it on YouTube or whatever. They decided Maven gives us a little bit more reputational value for our audience. And
Yep.
so we're balancing
And
out the
makes it
persona as
faster
well.
internally, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And gives us that extra distribution because of the credibility they have. Um, and also Maven promoted a little bit because it's a cool idea and they want to promote AI courses. So it works great. I think another like classic example of this is I see is people are like, I just had this today. They're like, we had a contractor make this gated white paper. I was like, well, how are you getting people to the gated white paper? And they're like, oh, I'm just gonna put it on our website. I'm like, you don't have any website traffic. So you're gonna put it on LinkedIn as like a LinkedIn ad where it's, that's what you're getting? Because I
Yeah.
don't know that a white paper is the best thing there. A better thing might be like, here's the playbook we use for X. I hate this tactic, but comment dolphin to get it, but or just actually sending it to people.
Guilty, guilty.
Yeah, I have never done it, and I swear I never will. But I understand you sometimes have to do it. It does kind of work.
Right.
But you know what? Like they're not thinking about where is this going? And that's like it makes your content look bad, even if it's the best content ever. Maybe instead of making that white paper, you should have just made a carousel on LinkedIn that your founder shared because your founder has a following. So
Yeah.
these are some examples.
Love that. I could drill down on this forever because I'm dealing with a lot of this myself, but let's keep going here. Because you have this,
Yeah.
you're thinking about this balance, but then we kind of got into it a bit. Is like now you need to think about that balance between fuel and engine, but then run a campaign above that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So
it's
this
like
is
a layer up.
this is an imperfect diagram. I actually posted on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago. I was like, I'm trying to make this diagram that shows what the hell a campaign is because people ask me all the time, and like it's just not quite right. So it's still a work in progress. But what is a campaign? Campaign means lots of things to lots of people. To me, like a big campaign, a high impact campaign, is an initiative that combines fuel and engine for a specific audience segment, usually around a specific theme, often for a set period of time. So the main point is you're running campaigns around a theme to combine fuel and engine. And so if your team doesn't have a campaigns motion of like put the fuel in the engine, learn from the distribution, optimize it, put better fuel in the engine and around different themes at different times throughout the year or for different audiences, you're going to be working in silos. So I think the key to building a content strategy for the people here that works is to make sure you're thinking about these actually as content driven campaigns. Example, like we're putting out this data report. We have this proprietary data and we're putting it out. Let's build a campaign around that. Let's do, state of name industry. I don't know, state of whatever, state of
Yeah.
AEO, GEO. Let's put out this report, and then let's do a campaign where we put out the report, and then we do a webinar on that campaign, or sorry, on that data report. We share different stats daily about that report, all of these things. You go to an event and you actually release the report at the event. I just spitballing these, maybe not the best ideas in the world, but you're putting together a campaign around that rather than just like this goes out and we hope the growth or demand gen team distributes this well.
Yeah, we did actually a state of content teams report back in the spring, but it like lined up nicely with the conference we were going to, and we did some like
Yes.
postcards and stuff like that to like download. So it worked out pretty well. Yeah, we did a webinar kind of about it too. So I wouldn't say I had it all planned out from the start, but it was like moving in that
You were
direction.
trying to think of it like a campaign. It's that campaign level thinking. And sometimes, I mean, most teams aren't going to necessarily have a campaign manager, or sometimes I call it a producer to combine these efforts. Maybe you do, like an integrated campaigns manager, some larger teams do, or even product marketers sometimes take on this role. But maybe you're not going to have that. So if you don't have that, as a content person, you need to be doing it yourself. Like you need to be thinking in terms of campaigns and leading the charge, or your content's not going to be seen by people.
And that really connect that back up to the idea of a product too, because you have like a product manager who's like thinking about all these
Yes,
different parts.
great point. Yeah, I think we have the
Sweet.
team.
Whoa.
Look at that segue, Josh. Um, see, I knew that that's what comes next.
Yeah,
So, uh, yeah, the point here is that marketing usually has these three functions: content and brand, sometimes separate, sometimes together, product marketing, and growth marketing or demand gen. whatever you want to call it, not getting into all these semantics. But a lot of times what happens, as I was just saying, is the understanding of the audience, product, and market that product marketing has doesn't cross over to the people making the content or making assets or running your brand. And that content doesn't get distributed over or distributed by your growth team, and everyone's working in silos. So I like this idea of having a campaign manager or a producer on your team that does this, that actually reports into the head of marketing. I think it works really well. And so it's just an interesting idea. If you're trying to treat, these are like your PMs. So if you think about it as the fuel team is like a designer in some ways. Your engine team is somewhat like it can be like a technical team, like your engineers, and your product marketers are sort of the PMs doing the research. So it doesn't work perfectly and match to a product team, but it's multidisciplinary. And when things are multidisciplinary, it's hard to say, multidisciplinary, you tend to need like a product manager or someone to connect the dots. And a lot of marketing teams are missing this. And so it's just to say, if it's missing, you're going to do yourself a favor by trying to be that glue between teams.
Yeah, I love that like communication layer between the three of those. That's like, especially when you're running campaigns, you really do need somebody to kind of, produce it almost like a TV show or something.
Yeah, when I was like building and running teams, like I often took on this role of like being that producer, but it's really hard when you're building and running a team as it scales to be that. And so I actually would bring someone on that was kind of like chief of staffy, like a chief of staff working closely with me to run campaigns. And I called them different things to get head count for it, essentially, like a brand manager or a campaign manager, or even just like an EA that did this. But it can be really useful. And I think it makes sense when you think about the engineering product design model. But anyway.
Yeah. In the old like ad agency days, it kind of reminds me of like a traffic person. Remember, or I don't know if people have experience with that.
That was my first job, Josh.
There you go. Yeah. Where
I
you were
was an
like
ad
managing all the
trafficker.
campaigns.
Which doesn't sounds weird, but yeah, you're just managing all of the campaigns, like all the creative going through. So I was doing it for print, radio, TV, cinema, and online, like making sure the assets got to the right places.
Right. And to kind of like build on that, really, she touched on it already. Is just like think of marketing like product and not necessarily sales. And I love this graphic about how it is like showing the overlaps, but also some differences too.
Yeah, I think the thing here is like one of the things about content as a product is like if marketing operates like a sales team, you're trying to drive pipeline this quarter. And that's part of your job, but it's just part of your job as a marketing team. Marketing teams are best leveraged when they work full funnel, when they think about life cycle, as well as helping upsell and expansion, as well as driving efficiency and thinking in terms of long-term thinking. Like a product team isn't going to go and just build, most product teams aren't just thinking about what I'm building this quarter. They're thinking about what am I building this year? Like, what are the foundational things I need to build? All of these things. And marketing is very similar to that. And so often founders especially think marketing's like sales, and they just keep wanting to just keep hiring marketers like it's a math problem. Like we're trying to hit this amount of revenue, divide by quota number of people you need, when they don't think about marketing as multidisciplinary. And so you need to balance out those fuel hires with those engine hires and things like that. And so I think if you are leading a content team or leading a marketing team, this is just a great thing to say, oh, actually, like, here's how to think about it. It's more like building a product team.
Yeah.
So, cool.
Wow, that was only part one. This is incredible. I'm taking like all kinds of notes. I'm going to review this for myself.
Originally Josh had like triple the slides or a lot. And I was like, there's no way I can do all this in an hour. This is like the entire Market One universe of things.
I'm trying to make this high value here. That's what we need.
All right. So now we're just talking about, well, how do you actually make this amazing content that's like product-like content? So we talked about the strategy and the structure to get you to a place where you can make higher value, higher impact content that isn't random acts of marketing. And so one of the things I personally do, because I have a newsletter, if you didn't know, that has 60,000 subscribers and growing. And I try to stay true to these things, which is I'm always trying to add value. If I don't think that the thing I'm putting out there is valuable and differentiated and not just regurgitating what somebody else has said, I don't do it. I've like scrapped whole newsletters. So I'm like, this is not saying anything new. And that shows because people continue to open and subscribe and those kinds of things. They know when they get something from me, hopefully, that it's usually going to be pretty good. And I also try to stay relevant and like be on top of trends, which does involve spending a lot of time on LinkedIn and in groups and communities and talking to other marketers. I'm always trying to avoid random acts of marketing. So most of my things, everything that I do ladders back up to these frameworks or this like content IP that I have built, which we'll talk about. So everything that I write is going to reference fuel and engine. Everything that I write, most things that I write are going to reference random acts of marketing. The RAM is definitely my most frequently used emoji in my writing.
Yeah.
The other thing though is like I try to hold myself to this bar, but I'm also not afraid to miss. Like I'm not afraid to take a big swing and say I haven't done something like this before. Like I launched a podcast this year. I haven't done a podcast. I'm gonna try this and I'm gonna do a season. I'm not gonna commit to it forever, and I'm gonna see how it goes, and we're gonna iterate from there. And so we're about to end season 1. Our last episode comes out next week, and then we'll iterate and do it to season 2 in 2026. So and you know what? It's not as successful right now as the newsletter. I've been doing the newsletter for 4 years. It's not going to be. So I take calculated bets and I'm not afraid to miss.
Yeah. But in that process,
but I still hate missing though, by the way. Like I get really upset. I'm like, this was one of my best pieces. Why are the open rates lower than this other one that sucks? But it's good to have that too.
I have a lot of questions, but I feel like my head is jumping to production questions, especially when you were like, but I'm gonna save that for the end because I think I need to take a step back here and really think about the ICP, how that matches to the marketing advantages. And I love your idea about perceptions, and I really want you to touch on that too.
Yeah, so this goes back to then like, well, okay, you have these guiding principles. You're like obsessed with quality. You're going to take big swings because that's what's going to pay off. Not doing random acts of marketing. How do you decide what to make? Go back to all the things I was talking about at the beginning. So I like to kind of make this central place where I summarize all the major strategy inputs. This is like a Figma version. You could have it in a doc. Most companies I work with have it in a doc, like strategy doc. Wherever you could have it in a Notion, you could have it as like a Asana task, whatever you want to do. You could have it on your wall if you're in person. So what you're going to put on that is what are your main ICPs that you're focused on in priority order? What are your marketing advantages? List them out. You can even add in there, like, what are the marketing advantages and how much are we accelerating them right now? Like, where do we need to actually put more effort into them? You're going to include your perceptions. These are your high level narratives or high level storylines that you're trying to tell. I think we have a slide on that, right? Slide. Go forward. Yeah, we do. Okay, cool.
This one?
We have multiple slides. Yeah, you can go back. I just wanted to make sure.
Whoops.
That we got a lot. Sneak preview.
Yeah.
Okay. You also want to have your goals. I could spend a whole hour, and I have, talking about how to set goals, but you want to have goals in here too. What are the big things you're focused on? You don't want to set and forget your goals. And then I also like to have your revenue levers, which again, whole other concept, but it's really like, what's most important right now? Is it to drive top of funnel? Is it to drive upsell and expansion? And in what order? Is it to go after new audiences or stay with the same core audiences? I think getting alignment on these revenue levers and these goals and these ICPs and these advantages is super helpful for everyone on the marketing team to say, when I'm making something, does it fit in this universe? Or am I trying to make something for an audience that isn't on this list or is in tier 4, tier 3, that doesn't play to a marketing advantage, that doesn't ladder up to a goal, that is like, focus on expansion. We don't even care about expansion right now. Like, do these things make sense? And so I'll talk a little bit more about perceptions in a second, but I think knowing what your lenses are that you're prioritizing through is super helpful. I think then also when you're trying to decide what content to create, not all content needs to be about product. I think a lot of people think that it does, or maybe you have a product marketer and not a content marketer, or maybe you have the wrong ratio. Your audience cares about a lot of things. And so one way this was described to me is someone I used to advise years ago, before I worked with you, Josh, I think. She said that she used to work for a juice company. She was a founder, so she had a totally random background. And she used to work for a juice company like a corporate juice company. And I don't know if it was Jamba Juice. I like to think it was because it's funnier that way.
Orange Julius. Yeah.
Orange Julius in the mall. She works at
Yeah.
Orange Julius in the mall. No, but the rule went on the content side was only talk about the juice, like the literal juice, the product, X% of the time. I think they had like a 10% juice rule, but it actually kind of works for everyone. Like the concept of juice being your product. So think about how much you want to talk about your product and how much you want to talk about other things your audience cares about. And it doesn't have to be 30-70. It kind of changes over the life cycle of your company. Early on, people don't know what your product is. So you have to get them in the door, top of funnel, probably with things that aren't necessarily directly about your product, especially if it's a new category. And then you have to hook them in with your product. So think about this balance, this juice balance. Or are we just stuck making only mid-funnel content about the product? Or are we also making top of funnel content too about our brand and our story and vice versa? So just a fun way to think about it when you're creating things. Make sure you're not always talking about the juice.
And this filters up into that fuel balance is like this
Yeah.
content is part of the fuel. So like 30% of that fuel is the flow right
Yes.
there, just to kind of
Yeah.
connect the dots.
And
a
these,
bit.
again, these are just like random, they're not totally random percentages. For a lot of companies, this is right, or they're spending too much time talking about the product, but it does vary over time.
While we're here talking a little bit about content specifically, we had a question come in, and I'll get to these other questions too. But are perceptions similar to content pillars? Going back to this previous idea.
Let's do that on this
Oh,
slide.
here we go. Yeah, another great segue.
They're two different things. I wish I had the image that shows the difference. They're two different things, but they're very closely related. So perceptions are your highest level narratives. Content pillars are more tactical. So, or a layer down. So I think about this universe as you have your brand, and then you have this is the concentric circles. You have your overall story. Product story is part of that. That's the juice. Maybe it's 30% of your overall story. I don't know what this mathematically is in this diagram. Looks more like, maybe 40%. And then your product positioning is also just one part of your product story. Like you want to drive your positioning home, but you can say more things about your product than just what your positioning covers. So this is how I think about like story. And so if positioning is really helping you tell your product story or one part of your product story, how you're different from competitors, what's helping you guide your story? And really the best way to avoid that random acts of marketing and actually make sure your story matters is to decide what these are, and to decide, sorry, I'm getting over a cough, so my voice is doing like cracking like I'm a 12-year-old boy. We just went to like a pitch I didn't know I could hit. My dog is on my lap and he's like, what? Yeah, I always have a 10-pound dog named Dinosaur on my lap. It's my secret to success. He demands to be on my lap when I'm talking on calls. Anyway, I digress. So your perceptions are and we're gonna give you some examples. They're gonna help you define your story. They're going to be from the perspective of your audience. What do you want your audience to say back to you? And when they're combined, they are unique to your company, and they should be short and sweet and memorizable to everyone on the marketing team, at least. And so most of the content and campaigns you create are going to ladder up to these. So let's go to the next slide, because it's easier to talk about this So let's imagine that it's early days of all of these companies, Stripe, Salesforce, and Asana. I worked at Asana early days and we used a form of this. So I can say that this is like somewhat roughly what they were. So let me do the Salesforce one. I mean, this is a while ago, but I picked ones that aren't just all like AI focused.
Right.
But the insight for Salesforce was all software is moving from on-prem to in the cloud. Seems crazy now. But like, you're not right. Like, it's not going to be on servers. It's going to be in the cloud. And so we are not only going to talk about moving sales software to the cloud, we're going to talk about the cloud in general. Because if we can make the cloud a thing, then we can make sales software in the cloud a thing. So at a high level, this isn't really about their product. They were talking about the trend. Software is moving to the cloud. We are leaders in this movement. They literally have a cloud as their logo. So that's how that shaped and these are hypothetical, but this is what I imagine they roughly were. On the and they don't have to fall into these categories of like a perception about your product, a perception about an insight. It's just helpful to think about them this way. More on maybe the product or tactical side, it's like my sales team's administrative burden can be lower, right? And like maybe that's their positioning and why it's better, but it's really like, what's the biggest benefit? You can create a lot of content about that. And then lastly, they might have had something, they did a lot of events early on, they always have. Now they obviously have massive events. Dreamforce is massive, but could have been something like, we think trade shows are boring and we think that we can actually do the best possible events in B2B. And we can do those because we have Mark Benioff, back to Marketing Advantages, who has a lot of charisma and is a really great person to put on stage. And so these might, and then all of their content can kind of ladder up to these. One of the things Stripe decided early on the marketing and just in general content side is that they were going to have the best developer docs out of anyone, not out of payments or fintech platforms, out of anyone. And so they had to focus on that, and they had to build a content structure around putting out the best developer docs. And then since then, tons of companies have copied them on this. So these are examples of perceptions, and you can see that some of them pull from Marketing Advantages, and some of them pull from what you're analyzing is going on in the market, and some of these are just pulling from your story. So a lot of the work you did to identify those marketing advantages and look at the drivers of your strategy help you write this. So, I mean, AirOps, an obvious one is just like you have to rank in LLMs, like that, right? So it's from the perspective of your audience. It doesn't even need to be fancy, but a lot of the content you should be making needs to say like, or maybe it's you can rank in LLMs, or I can rank in LLMs. My company can rank. My company can get traffic from LLMs, whatever it might be, but that could be one for you. Yeah.
I was just thinking about the marketing advantage here, going back to like some of the initial stuff, like Salesforce is in the cloud, but it also deals with sales folks. And so they were like, sales conferences are kind of boring. Trade shows are boring. That hits where our audience, where salespeople go. Like, let's create a really good one. Stripe developers, you always need great documentation for that. So that was like the right channel for that product in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So it's just thinking about what are the stories you're going to tell. And if you're having a hard time doing this, I would think about it in these categories. Like, what's the biggest thing we want to say about our unique insight? What's our most interesting point of view or take on what's going on right now?
Yeah.
Like I worked with a company that's building a platform around usage-based pricing, instead of paying a subscription fee. And like the big thing there is like, AI companies are moving to usage-based pricing from subscription pricing. If they can make that a reality and make even more companies switch to usage-based pricing, they're going to win, or at least be a contender to win. But if companies all stay on subscription-based pricing,
they're not going to win.
They're kind of in trouble. So they need to make the movement as well as push the product. And so they're probably going to not talk about the juice as much at the beginning. They're going to talk about that larger story of like, this is not just a trend, like this is the new business model for AI. Get on board. And it's the same thing for Salesforce. It's a very similar thing. Like things are moving to the cloud, or the same thing with AI now too, right? So it all comes back to your strategy. And then you can use these perceptions to, I like to make content plans based on perceptions. So I have perceptions, shared them in a newsletter I wrote about my own content strategy. Like one of my perceptions is like, Market One is the best place to learn about new marketing tools. And so then I have a whole plan for things I'm going to write about that. I'm going to, I do these like AI showcases where people come on and different companies come on and show their products. I did a whole thing about running an AI hackathon and what tools to use inside your company. Like I make my roadmap based on the perceptions, not random ideas, unprioritized. Like I go through and think about campaigns and planning this way.
That's a good note for me, for sure, to think about it from that perspective. I did want to hit on this, and it was on the other slide, because this is one of the most like actionable things that people can take. Like once you start all that kind of pre-work of your advantages, your perceptions, and then getting down to brass tacks here with the GACCS is really, really helpful.
Yeah. So you might be like, whoa, this is a lot of stuff to think about. But the way that it comes together is when you're making content, please make a brief, and you can make it a brief. And when you're making a brief, put these things in it. And I used this at way back when I was at Asana 10 years ago now, which is crazy. And I used it when I was at Carta, and I teach it to everyone I advise. And almost everyone who still has worked for me still uses something like this, because it's just really a great way to make sure you're including all the things. And it's telling you, should I be making this in the first place? And then if I am going to make it, to get alignment on the thing before you start making it. And so GACCS, it started as GAC, which if you're a millennial, you might remember Nickelodeon GAC, which is like the weird Play-Doh-y stuff.
Right.
So I just think of that. I need to like make GAC with GACCS on it as like a giveaway for something
Nice.
funny. But GACCS is list your goals and ladder those up to your high level goals as a team, as well as goals for that specific piece of content. List your audience, list the ICP specifically, and be as specific as possible. It might go more specific than your ICP. List if you're going like what life cycle stages you're trying to hit them at. By life cycle stages, I mean funnel stages, but people don't like the funnel anymore, so I say life cycle now.
Mm.
That's an aside.
Yeah.
On the creative side, this is really listing out what's the fuel strategy, what are the perceptions, what are the core messages. I didn't really talk about the content pillars thing as much as the question asked. The content pillars are really just like a level down and almost like subsets of those perceptions, and also may incorporate maybe even some SEO and GEO style pillars as well. So it might be a little broader too, but they're kind of the level down from that. So you
Yeah.
might put, what are the perceptions and the pillars that this supports? What are the key messages? Channels is, where is this going? What's the engine strategy? Where am I distributing this? And if you don't have an answer here, you shouldn't make the thing. And it's stakeholders is obvious who's involved. And then everyone that's on that stakeholder list, you send this to before you make the thing, and you get buy-in on it before. So you don't waste a whole bunch of time. So this is just doing this is gonna make you have to do all that other stuff. It's gonna make you have to think about high level goals, think about your ICPs, think about your creative strategy and all that.
Yeah, this is like really, I've had some seasons where I've done this more than others, and it's always like something to come back to as far as like, what am I really working on and creating? Like, what is the purpose of this blog post or this newsletter, this webinar series, whatever, to really get back to this. So
I do it for my own newsletters. I don't put stakeholders, but like I do an abridged version for
dinosaur.
my own. Yeah. Well, I have two people who edit and read my stuff. Katie and Hallie are behind the scenes helping me with all the things, but like I don't put that part, but I do like think that through. So
Yeah, I know we're kind of hitting at time here.
yeah.
Should we talk about this or maybe talk about how this levels up to CMOs?
Yeah, I think the thing here is like, I think the last thought is like, if you're thinking about content as a product, your product has sort of your core features, your core workflows, and then some other things layered on top. And so something to think about is when I'm creating content or driving forward my perceptions, are there things like frameworks or point of view, you know what I'm trying to say,
Hmm.
perspectives, things that are ownable for us. And can I then use them across everything I'm doing? So one of those things for me is this GACCS framework. I call them, it's a joke, but kind of become not a joke, which is I call them Cramworks because Kramer. I have all these Cramworks, which are just frameworks I've come up with that I use across everything, as I talked about. So I have a GACCS framework. I talk about it all the time. In almost every post, talks about use a GACCS brief to do this. And here's a GACCS brief specific to, say, a product launch or an event. And so I reinforce that across everything I do. So I have a template for it. I have a dedicated newsletter. I reference it in other newsletters. I reference it in the podcast. I did a guest post in Lenny's newsletter a long time ago about the GACCS brief. So I'm reusing the same concept or content IP across the board. So it's beyond
Hmm.
repurposing. It's like, what are our core things that we talk about and just repurposing them? So systematic approach, like you would a
Yeah.
product.
I think this works really well for leveling up to the CMOs or to the C-suite because it's like, what are our main things that we're going to be known for? And here at
Yes.
AirOps, one of those things is around like content engineering is something that we've talked a lot about. We're talking a lot about visibility. We're talking a lot about AI search and content workflows. So those are like our core content IP, our core topics that we're going to like return to again and again.
Yep. And again, this is like one level below perceptions. It's like, we're trying to drive this perception. I'm trying to drive this perception that uh marketing needs to be a strategic function, and so like the GACCS is one of those things, right?
Right.
Or I think my perception is actually avoid random acts of marketing, and so the GACCS helps you do that, and so these come from that. again, lots of different things to consider, and maybe you're not going to use all of these different things, but if you use one thing, use the GACCS brief.
Yeah. On this is we just rolled this out as far as a metric for content teams to think about brand visibility with LLMs, and we have like citations, share of voice, sentiment that feed into that. So this is one of the things that we're talking about as far as like organic search goes as a metric for content teams to start thinking about. And then that does impact your pipeline, your sentiment. Are there some other metrics that you're encouraging content teams to think about as, you know, there's been a lot of shifts with organic traffic in particular?
Yeah, I think the across the board in marketing right now, like a lot of the attribution we used to use is broken because we used to do a lot of like first touch attribution or the source of of someone who came inbound, and you're just going to get less people like coming inbound to your website. And let me back up for a second. uh you should be loading up your accounts and contacts, enriched account and contacts, into HubSpot or Salesforce. When you do that, that becomes the original source. And then it's going to mess everything else up. And so what do you do when the original source is now, oh, we researched all of these and we're having less inbound traffic, so don't know where it came from. And so a lot of these first touch, last touch attribution, people get so stuck in this. And really the most important thing to me is that you look at campaign influence. So you tag specific campaigns. You're going to do tag more. Campaign means a slightly different thing in Salesforce and HubSpot, but you're going to tag your initiatives and you're going to track campaign influence on pipeline and campaign influence on revenue and look at how these things are actually contributing to the money. And it might
Right.
take a little while to do this, and it doesn't add up to you're going to end up with, it's not mutually exclusive. So multiple things can play a role into closing a deal. And so your influence revenue might be higher than your regular revenue, if that makes sense. But the point is that looking at campaign influence is a great way to say, how are these initiatives performing?
And
And
so
how
that
are
might
they
not even
performing
be
overall?
like last touch, but it could just be like
No,
in
it's not. It's
that
not. It's
journey,
not at all.
right?
It's,
Yeah.
was this part of the journey that happened to close this deal or to make pipeline? What were the things that were part of that?
Yeah.
Because first touch and last touch, or last touch even before a meeting, just creates like fights and arguments and details that often just distract from what are the things that are working together to make us successful. And I think also when you try to get down to what amount of pipeline did this individual piece of content drive or this individual channel, you start optimizing at like a micro level versus the macro level of like, we are trying to overall have the lowest cost to acquire customers and reach this revenue goal. And so it's a blended thing. And so I could talk for days on this. This is like a pet peeve, but
Yeah.
campaign influence, look into it.
I'll add a note because, you know, we have a lot of SEO people and some like content marketers that have used AirOps. And I know one of the things that you helped me with was thinking of SEO and even content as part of the bigger brand marketing picture. And I think now, which is like such a new world we're in with just mentions and visibility and things like that, that's becoming an even like bigger part. And it's helped me to really like break out of my SEO organic traffic only type silo.
Yeah.
Um, so
Another quick
yeah,
thing there is I'm really into, with AI, it's so much easier to track brand mentions across the board. And so, and do like share of voice, like you mentioned, but it's really easy to do that with, it's just much easier to do that now with AI to see how often you're being mentioned all over the place as a measure of brand. And so I think every company should be setting up workflows to track that stuff, which
yeah.
wasn't really possible before without really advanced and complicated tooling.
Um, I'm gonna
Yeah.
chat a little bit about AirOps and then we'll get to our questions here in a second. So one of the new things that we've rolled out at AirOps is this like visibility to action layer, like I was talking about earlier. Descript is one of our customers. You can find their case study on our website, but they hit a high of 28% after they refreshed their content using AirOps content workflows. You can see how you can go from low content quality to non-branded improvements in LLMs, and even year over year signups has increased with a lot of the things that we're doing with systematically refreshing your content and updating your content. So if you are interested in how you can move your content to a pipeline playbook, this is a good example of what you now can see with our visibility layer in AirOps. It helps you to prioritize those opportunities, take action, and then measure and repurpose from that. And one of the advantages that we have is you can see how you're performing in LLMs, but then take the action step from it. So if you're interested in that, have a lot of, we're currently giving out early access to this. Isn't completely out on our platform yet, but we are introducing it to a lot of folks. So especially folks who attend webinars with Emily Kramer. So if you're interested, email us at growth@airops.com and just put early access in the subject line. We'd be happy to chat with you about it. And then here's a QR code you can go to as well. And let's hit on some Q&A here too in our last few minutes. One question I know a lot of folks have is, how do you bring this up and communicate this to the C-suite? Like, how do you say like, hey, this is the things that we're going to change here?
Yeah, for
What do
sure.
you think is good communication for content to the C-suite on this?
Yeah, so I think the big thing you should be communicating up and over is some of these building blocks. We are building our content strategy based on these perceptions. We're thinking about these campaigns that will make that, for our big pieces of content, we're thinking about them in terms of campaigns with distribution built in and really like connecting the dots there. And so here are our perceptions. Here are our marketing advantages that we're trying to lean into. Here are the campaigns we're running. Here's why this matters, and kind of explaining just those building blocks of what goes into your content strategy. And then also, I think if you are currently setting the goals I was picking on at the beginning around write 10 posts a month, like stop with that and start thinking more in terms of campaign influence metrics or share of voice metrics if you're doing things on the very top of funnel brand side, and start thinking in terms of those things. Like the quantity of stuff that you put out doesn't matter as much as the quality does. And no matter how many times people say that, I still see so many teams with these goals that just don't match up with that. Of course, there needs to be some accountability there. You're putting out, that you're putting things out there, but really the goal is not just to check the box on 10 things. And so I think that's the goal, is to move away from that strategy and move to, we're focusing on telling these stories. We're focused on doing that via campaigns. Here's what they are. Is there anything we think we're missing on these stories that we're trying to tell? And so
Yeah.
that's the level I like to get aligned on.
I think one of the things that I struggle with as like a person who creates blog posts and kind of has set some of those quantity goals in the past is, where does consistency come into play? And even with like your campaign planning, because yeah, I mean, you could have one big campaign for like just the whole year, but I mean, I know like marketing moments is a thing that a lot of teams do as well. I mean, should you have any
That's kind of the
rhythm
same
to
thing.
it?
A
Okay.
marketing moment, a big initiative, a campaign, like a big project. I mean, I think that you should have 1 to 2 big moments a quarter,
Mm,
even when you're small. And then as you scale, the big moments should not scale with the number of people. It's not like when you have 30 people, you now have 15 big moments. No, you still have 3 or 4. They're just bigger big moments. Like the point is everyone needs to coordinate and
yeah.
combine the fuel and engine and just get mileage out of the things that you're doing and focusing on. So like I plan my content as like I have one big theme. This just works for me in like the newsletter cycle, like one big theme a month that drives most of my social strategy, that drives most of the content I do. The podcast messed this up a little bit, but the templates I make, it's built around a theme. And sometimes that theme actually lasts for 2 or 3 months. But I think of it in themes, not really as campaigns. So whatever mental model works for you, but you got to know those big things that you're pushing. And it's just going to work better than just, again, checking a bunch of things off your list.
Yeah. One last question I want to get to, because it came in via email. And so thank you. I'm forgetting the person's name who sent it, but they had a question about budget percentage for content compared to like the events budget or like the paid ad budget. They spend so much money on like a trade show or something like that, whereas content might be 5% of the budget. That might be like 30% of the budget. How do content teams think about budgets with the C-suite and with CMOs?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I can't like give a specific percentage, but I'll say this. If you're doing an expensive trade show and you're paying for it, and then your content budget or your budget for all the assets and brand work that goes into that trade show is like 5% of it, that doesn't make any sense. You need to be like, it doesn't need to be evenly balanced, but like there needs to be some balance there. Like the quality or the effort and the quality and the inputs on the fuel side need to match the money going in on the engine side. I think people are like, we spent all this money, we can't make a bunch of content before or pay contractors to do this and that for us, or we can't spend a lot of money on the booth. It's like, well, then you shouldn't have bought the booth in the first place if you're not going to make it amazing. So I
That's
think a
the
lot
answer.
of
Yeah.
it is like thinking through, well, what channels am I doing? If you're using LinkedIn, like you need to have good content to feed into LinkedIn. If you're using outbound, you need to have other calls to action than just meetings. And so it's good to think about, well, what's the work that needs to happen to make those things successful, and then chunking off budget kind of that way.
Yeah. Love
It's
that.
a good
Great place.
question though.
Yeah, and it's a hard one to it's a good one to think about for sure. You can find Emily here on LinkedIn for sure. She is a rock star on LinkedIn, and you can find us on LinkedIn as well, AirOps. If you want to get early access to our visibility layer, please email us at growth@airops.com. This recording will be going out here maybe this afternoon, maybe tomorrow. So thank you, Emily, and
Yeah, thanks for
appreciate
having
your
me.
time.
This was fun. Thanks for listening, everyone. Sorry we didn't have time for more questions, but there's a lot to say.
Yes, everyone go back and rewatch this. I know I will for sure.
Content is a product. Say it loudly.
Yeah. Thanks everyone, and we will see you at the next one.